Ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome to the TangentCast.
Oh, is that our official naming convention now, is it?
Yes, until I think of something better.
Alright, could you elaborate as to why that it's had such a weird name?
Well, because people have been very eager, shall we say, to point out that we have a tendency, a small one mind, to go off on tangents sometimes. And that lovely person in every comment section who does the timeline, thank you very much for that, by the way.
You have many internet kudos.
Yeah.
If your internet...
He lists all of our tangents, and it kind of made me realise how many tangents we actually go on. So it seemed a fitting title for the podcast.
How many tangents were there?
I don't recall the exact number, but there was a few. I think last week was our tangiest of tangents.
Really?
Yes.
Do you know what I just realised? This intro's turned into a minute.
Yes. On that note, how have you been this week, Paul?
Not quite dying of the flu, so that's nice.
Yes. Thankfully, I am almost recovered from the plague that struck us both down over the last couple of weeks.
It's absolutely ridiculous how long it just lasted.
Yeah, it was. I don't know what it was, but it was nasty.
No, And the thing is, every time I started to feel better, it was like, actually...
Like, no to your happiness.
Pretty much. So,
what have you been playing this week? I think the answer on this one is going to be the same for both of us, so...
Yeah, basically, when we've been both sick, I've been coming over to her house, and we've been playing Resident Evil 2.
Yeah, we decided that it was time to replay a favourite classic of both of ours, since we talked about it a little bit last week. So, it's probably the first time that we've both played it in a while, like 5+ years, maybe even 10.
I would say it's 10.
Yeah, roughly. I mean, I'm not really sure the last time I played it, but that sounds about right.
I know it was before I got my PS2. Maybe at the best, I played it for a couple of minutes when I had my PS2. And I might have tried it as on emulator just a little bit, just kind of screwing around.
Yeah, but for me it's like 5+ years, maybe 10, I can't really recall. So yeah, we've been replaying Resident Evil 2, and I think the first instance, like when we loaded into the game, was, oh god, I forgot how awful tank controls are.
To be honest, it only took me a while to get used to them again. I had that initial shock value, but after that I was like,
yeah, no, I was the same. Like, it didn't take me long to get back into the rhythm, but at first I was like, oh Jesus, these are terrible.
I kind of like them though. They're like an old familiar friend.
I mean, you're just saying that because of nostalgia though. Like, if a game came out like that now, like fucking Heavy Rain did a couple of years ago that had tank controls, they are so bad.
I think the thing with Resident Evil 2 though is that the enemies and the whole game were created around tank controls.
Obviously, yeah, it's of the time, and obviously when the remake comes out, we're not going to have that. We're probably going to have like Resident Evil 0.
I wouldn't be surprised
style.
if there's both.
They'll probably have the option, like with the Resident Evil 0 remake, to have tank or the improved ones.
What I noticed about Resident Evil 2, though, I've got to say, is just how finely balanced everything is. And by which I mean the combat, the puzzles...
At least until you find the custom shotgun is balanced.
Yeah, but even then, it's like some of the enemies, yeah, you know, zombies are nothing. But it's like if you start wasting all your shotgun ammo on zombies, you're going to have a really bad time with it later on.
Obviously, you don't want to waste that on zombies, but still... It's a very fun weapon to use.
I actually say that I really love Resident Evil 2, and I remember completing each scenario in turn: Leon A, then Claire B, then Claire A, then Claire B, and I think I've completed it like a good half a dozen times in a row.
So many times. I said I actually unlocked Tofu without meaning to.
Really?
I played it so many times.
Did you ever complete it with Hunk? I think I did once.
I don't think I actually unlocked Hunk, you know.
I think you have to unlock Tofu. I think. Don't quote me on that.
I
Someone's probably
can't quite remember. I know you need one to get the other, and I can't remember which way round it is.
I think it's Hunk to get Tofu.
Actually, no. Sorry, I told like no. I did get Hunk, and Hunk is really fucking difficult. He actually is really hard. Same with Tofu, because you only got a knife.
But he's got a lot more health. You know, there's a guide on the internet, which I was kind of skim reading. I wasn't intending to follow it. But there's a guide where you can actually complete the game as Tofu without even using your knife. It's literally a passive run.
How?
I don't know. I didn't read it. I literally just kind of skimmed.
Okay, that's kind of interesting. I'm curious on how that works.
They basically say that to beat it, you have to kind of let yourself get hit sometimes so you can push the enemies off into you.
Yeah, but what about like boss fights and stuff?
I don't know if there are any, but as I said, I've not really played enough of Tofu.
Yeah,
to
like,
know.
I unlocked Tofu, but I didn't really play much of him.
For all I know, the guide's a troll, but as far as I know, it's pretty legit. So
I don't know.
Anyway,
So,
tangent number 15.
Yeah, we've been enjoying some lovely Resident Evil nostalgia when Resident Evil used to be good, basically.
I'm still a fan of it up to 5. Less
Five,
so.
5 was okay. 6 was an absolute travesty that we just no.
Abomination.
Yeah.
Although I must say, I really love Code Veronica. I think it's probably about one.
Code Veronica is really cool. I like the mechanic of like you can examine the things by spinning them around, so there'll be like keys on the bottom of plant pots and stuff. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is kind of cool. Anyway.
Yes, so let's move on from the games we've been playing this week because I believe that's all we've played this week. I certainly haven't had any time to play anything else.
I've played Rise of the Tomb Raider for about 10 minutes. Try out DirectX 12.
Was it amazing? Did it blow your mind?
So anyway, moving on.
Yes, I guess let's go with any order we like. I feel like the first thing we should talk about is we finally know how much the PlayStation VR base unit is going to cost. And it is £350 for the base unit. However, in that price, they neglect to mention that you absolutely 100% need the PlayStation camera to use PlayStation VR.
A phrase that you would only ever say if for virtual reality.
So, obviously, you can probably get that pre-owned now for like £40 or something. So, realistically, you're looking at $400 for everything that you 100% need. And then you could really make a strong argument that you also need the PlayStation Move controllers, given that a lot of games are probably going to be more optimized for them. But hopefully developers recognise that some people are going to be using the DualShock 4. Hopefully, we'll see. So, in reality, you're looking at more like $450 for the entire package of PlayStation VR, which is still cheaper than Oculus, but still.
Not that much cheaper.
However, obviously the PlayStation VR does have one advantage over the Oculus that isn't the price tag, in that you don't need like a £800 PC to run it.
True, but what concerns me is, and this is kind of a minor point, but with the next generation GPUs coming out from both AMD and Nvidia, it is going to significantly lower the barrier to entry or cost for entry on PC. So theoretically, if you've already got a fairly reasonable PC, the GPU upgrade is going to be not too expensive. It's going to be a lot cheaper than, let's say, the GTX 970 minimum now.
Yeah, plus there is that whole Style Dock thing of multi-GPU where you can mix and match between AMD and Nvidia, which I discussed a while back.
Well, it's basically a feature of DX12 anyway.
Yeah.
Which I created a simplified version for, so yeah, we'll try and remember to link that. Anyway.
Yeah, so there's that. I mean, personally, the price of the base unit is about what I expected, and obviously it's significantly cheaper than Oculus, but, with everything else thrown in, not really.
I was going to say.
However,
and the thing about Oculus as well is you get joypads and stuff, though personally I'd rather not include that.
The Oculus comes with an Xbox One controller, but it does not come with the special touch controllers that are more designed for haptic feedback and VR. They are not even out when the headset itself is out.
To be honest though, for the games that I want to play with VR, I don't necessarily know.
I think it depends like how these controllers actually work. I mean, the Vive is obviously the most expensive at about $800, I believe, and that does come with the special controllers. So, yeah, the Oculus doesn't come with the special VR controllers. However, it will come with an Xbox One controller of all things. So there you go.
I'd rather they do it slightly cheaper, but not put in the pad. But I realise that the reason they've done that is so that they can have like a minimum VR spec and all that bollocks. But it's like, come on now, how many Xbox?
The cost of the pad is probably not contributing to the cost of the.
Well, it's going to contribute a little bit.
A little, but I think it's more everything else that you got to worry about.
The thing is, how many PC gamers now don't have at least one joypad?
Well, very, very few. I mean, I think most of us have an Xbox 360 pad at least.
Yeah, minimum.
Yeah.
Or DualShock pad or something.
Some sort of USB controller that you play some games with. Because obviously, some games just don't work that well or at all with keyboard and mouse.
Speaking of games that don't work well, how in the balls is like the likes of Tekken going to work on that? I know Namco have experimented with first-person fighting games before, but that really confuses and frightens me.
I don't understand why Tekken is going to be VR. I don't understand.
For example,
I don't get it.
For example, let's say you're playing as Paul Phoenix for sake of argument. How the fuck are you going to do like quarter circle forward motions to do Phoenix Smasher? How is that even going to be a thing?
That's obviously going to be with like a controller or a fight pad or something.
I
just don't understand why that's even on VR in the first place.
No, that's really
that's very strange to me. I mean, a first-person game like I don't know, the new Mirror's Edge or something. All right, cool.
That could be quite a militant. I think that could be awesome.
I think that might be a bit prone to motion sickness, but
yeah, you know what? We really awesome. Give that to someone who's got vertigo.
Don't know. Anyway, so yeah, PlayStation VR looks cheap on the surface, but isn't really when you count in everything. However, it is still cheaper than Oculus because you don't need, a stonking deep GPU to run it. You just need a PlayStation 4. I suppose the next thing we want to talk about is how Sony said they will probably reject, and that's pretty much a direct quote, PSVR games that are sub 60 FPS, which is nice because motion sickness, but how many games are realistically going to reach that?
Well, I know that they've got this whole refresh rate technology, which the name eludes me right now, but basically it essentially doubles the refresh rate. Yeah. But I think they're referring to native of 60.
Yeah.
So the fact of the matter is, they have to do it because of motion sickness, but
they have to.
Yeah, but the PS4's GPU, they're going to have to make this balance of complexity of graphics as well.
Yeah, obviously you're not going to have super shiny graphics on that. I mean, obviously there is the external processing unit, but
which does nothing.
As far as I understand, that's more for audio than for
video. It doesn't do any visuals at all.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing it does visually is the PS4 renders it for the headset, and then the box renders it for the TV. It basically un-VRs it, essentially. So it doesn't do any image processing, though, as in it doesn't, for example...
No, it doesn't process any graphics or
it just basically changes the I guess you could say the way that the warping of the image a little bit for your TV, but it doesn't help the graphics. It doesn't improve the lighting or any of the other bollocks that the GPU's doing. So that's all down to the GPU. Yeah,
so it's going to be interesting to see how the games actually end up looking. I mean, I think most people would prefer a higher frame rate. I mean, virtual reality, you cannot have sub 60 because even Oculus, the minimum frame rate for that is 90 FPS. So even 60 is a bit low, to be honest.
Although isn't Doom? I think it's Doom running at 60 FPS on the PS4 and Xbox One. That's what they're going for.
Oh yeah.
So that could be quite interesting.
That's id. That's probably them doing some trickery with their graphics engine or something, knowing them.
Yeah, and it's also obviously not going to look as shiny as like a high spec PC theoretically.
No, it's not going to look like Crysis 3 anytime soon.
No, it does look quite amazing.
No, it looks nice. Don't get me wrong, but it's that whole phrase "can it run Crysis" is a thing for a reason.
Well, the original Crysis wasn't super well optimized as well.
So there's that. It's going to be interesting to see what actually happens. But I think the most interesting regarding PlayStation is your video about the PlayStation 4.5.
Yeah, I will be doing a follow-up for that of how I think it should be implemented and should it be implemented. But, I mean, the reality is, and as I said in my previous video and article, I'm unsurprised that they're doing it because let's face it, the PS4... It's getting a bit old already. I mean, it's been out... When was it released? Like 2013?
Yeah.
No, November, I think it was.
Yeah, so end of 2013, I believe.
Yeah, so it's basically coming up to 2.5 years old already, which is pretty incredible.
It seems crazy that it was that long ago, but it is.
Yeah, so the end of this year, you're looking at a 3-year-old piece of technology, and at the end of the day...
I don't think we're looking at another 10-year console
generation.
No, it
can't. It's like with 4K TVs. I was looking at a conference from both AMD and Microsoft, who you can say, yeah, they've got vested interest in all of that shit, especially Microsoft, but the thing is, they're saying that the adoption rate of HDR TVs, which are obviously offer considerably higher quality when it comes to the number of colours they can display, they're going to be pretty normal for customers to see by 2017.
Yeah, because obviously they were really expensive when they first came out on the market, but obviously they've gotten cheaper.
Yeah, and basically
they'll continue to get cheaper as the years go on.
Yeah, and they're actually saying their adoption rate is going to be higher than 4K. And then obviously you've got 4K displays, higher refresh rate displays, and all of this stuff is going to be quite important. So I think if Sony are really pushing VR, they're really pushing, to be on the forefront, there has to be something. Now, I'm going to go much deeper into this in a future video / article, because otherwise I'll be speaking about this for 40 minutes. But you've got a choice at this point. You can either basically say, well, this is going to be a short generation of systems, which is definitely one way to go. You can have a kind of interim upgrade, which is essentially the 4.5, or you can just literally fall behind the curve. And to be honest, if Sony are just saying, well, we're going to make this let's say a 6-year generation, which means really you've got another 3.5 years, the PC is going to be so far in front. It
already is. It was so far ahead when the PlayStation 4 first came out. That's the crazy thing.
Well, what really concerns me, and if they don't do this, is the PS4's GPU is about 1.84 T-flops, right? It's already struggling at 1080p at 30. And what I think is really funny is that if you... This is the rubbish that astounds me. It's like, if you see a developer, if it's a remaster, it's now the game the way it's meant to be played at 60 FPS. But when the game's only able to run at 30, it's a cinematic experience.
Don't give me that.
And
we can thank Ready at Dawn for that nonsense.
Well, several developers have said it.
I know, but they're the ones who took the mic with cinematic or 1886.
The bottom line is, by the time the next generation of GPUs that the Polaris is coming out this year. Polaris is coming out this year along with Pascal, and the cards are just looking fucking insane. And they're saying that these cards, the top end GPUs, are going to be about 12 T-flops, and that's single precision.
Yeah.
And yes, you're going to argue that they're really expensive for the really high end cards, but AMD are targeting performance per watt. So the GTX 970 equivalent is going to be pretty cheap. The next generation of cards, which for example for AMD is going to be Vega, which is going to be released in 2017, is going to be even more insane. They're saying it's going to be like twice the performance of Polaris. Now that might not sound like a big deal, but when you consider that 2017 is probably about the date that the PS4.5 or a successor to the PS4 could realistically be, let's say they do PS5, not PS4.5, right? And they really target it as the next generation PlayStation. They can't release it in 2016.
No.
So it's got to be...
PSVR's not even out till October.
No. So a PS4.5 you could release this year, theoretically. You could release it just after, PSVR.
Can I just ask a question?
Right.
I don't know if they've really said... How is this upgrade going to work? I mean, is it like a plug-in thing, kind of like the X32 for the Sega
32X? No.
Yeah, that's that
well,
thing.
No,
is it literally going to be we have to buy a whole new console now?
Well, they've not really said. There's a couple of different methods that they could do it. One would be an external breakout box, which would be connected via different connections to the system. Unfortunately, it's just bandwidth constraint, because essentially you don't have enough bandwidth on the ports of the PlayStation 4 to really push the image as like an external processing unit. So realistically, the only options are that they say to you, you're going to trade in your old PS4, right? Or they do it as I guess you could say a secondary system, which would be completely backwards compatible. So it would be the same architecture, just more powerful. Now, how that would work in reality is really down to anyone's guess, and this is something I'm going to be exploring in my video over the next couple of days. But it's like, you're in this really tricky situation where, let's say you've got a PS4.5, right? So let's say Sony, there's a couple of different ways they can handle it. Let's say you're Sony, and you say to me, okay, Paul, well, for your upgrade, I'm going to give you let's say $150 towards your system if you trade in your old console, right? So your new console costs, let's say $250, just for sake of argument. That's fine, fair enough, that's not a bad deal, but what's going to make things complex, I think, for a lot of users is, let's say you buy a game. What happens if you're a vanilla owner? Does that mean that certain games will not run on a vanilla system, or does it mean that you're going to have higher quality?
It'll probably be if that's the case, kind of like the new 3DS XL.
What, certain games run and certain games don't?
Well, they said there was going to be exclusive games for that. But as far as I understand, there is one game that only runs on the 3DS XL. But let's just pretend for a second that there were multiple. And it would be like that certain games, they won't run on my 3DS, which is just a normal 3DS. But they will run on the new 3DS. Because it's got more powerful hardware and blah. So it could be like that. There are certain games that will be like PS4.5 only. But, I don't know, it just seems to be splitting the market. I don't really see how this is not going to annoy people, to be honest.
My personal hope is that I hope Sony do something soon. Whether that's a PS4.5 or PS5 or whatever.
PS5 will be 2017 earliest.
Yeah.
Earliest.
But, I mean, honestly, we know that Sony are not just contemplating this, they're already developing something. Because this is not just
allegedly.
Well, no, developers have stated that they've already seen the hardware. They're basically...
Has Sony said anything?
No, but let's face it, when does Sony ever say anything? Like, for example, we knew...
I know, but it's always just important to point out that Sony have yet to officially make a statement.
Put it this way, whether Sony actually go through with it, or whether Sony are contemplating it, are two different things, but I'm firmly of the belief Sony are thinking heavily of doing this, because several trusted developers have spoken to sources, and they've said that they've seen reports, they've seen, basically what Sony are doing, and they know that they're going for 4K. And one developer actually joked from what he's been told, and they're not calling it the PS4.5, they're calling it the PS4K, because it's PS4 compatible. But that's beside the point. I believe they're considering it. Whether it actually comes through, whether the project turns to PS5, whether they just think, shit, this is a bad idea from feedback from customers or developers, but they are definitely considering. And I honestly believe that when Microsoft said back a few weeks ago that we're thinking of doing an upgradable Xbox One, they were thinking about heavily, but then Phil Spencer somewhat recanted.
Anyway, I think we've rambled on that topic for long enough, so the next thing is something I actually did a video on yesterday, so if you want the full details, do check that out. As always, shameless plug and all that. But it is the whole thing with Machinima. And just to kind of give you a refresher, I did a video a long time ago now. Basically, how Machinima did a naughty, and a couple of their YouTubers were paid quite a lot of money. One allegedly was $30,000 and another was $15,000. Basically, they were paid to say positive things about the Xbox One. They weren't allowed in the contract to say anything disparaging. And what?
Good use of the word disparaging.
Thank you. The most egregious part. This is already.
And good use of the word egregious.
Thank you. Oh, seriously, it's already pretty bad, but the most egregious part is that they were not allowed to disclose to their viewers. Obviously, if a YouTuber or whoever takes a brand deal, it's like, all right, cool, that's fine. Do what you need to do. But obviously, the moral and legal obligation that you have is to say, by the way, I've been paid to say these things. And if they've been allowed to say that, then it would have been fine. But basically, they didn't, and the FTC were like, you can't do that. That's illegal. Which is right. It is illegal to not disclose. And Machinima, they basically got a slap on the wrist. They have not been fined. There's now just an order on them that they have to let their creators disclose, and if they break it again, they'll be fined. But they have not been fined, despite the fact that between the release of the Xbox One and the end of that year, they released over 300 Xbox One positive videos. Now, even if you say not all of those were part of that brand deal, even if you say 10% of them were, that probably made them an obscene amount of money. So the fact that they weren't fined just boggles my mind a little bit, to be quite frank.
And I had this conversation yesterday. If I were Microsoft, I would have been happy to do that. I would be happy to, because you know what? At the end of the day, it doesn't reflect negatively on Microsoft. Yeah, but the thing is, they've come out fairly well with it.
Yeah, they've gotten away with it completely scot-free, and I think that's wrong.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
Microsoft also broke FTC regulations.
Yeah, but that's the thing. From Microsoft's perspective, they were going to get away with it. Like, the ones that it was going to most negatively impact are the creators, and that's why, from the perspective as a creator, you should not do that. Because
Ever.
No, because it's like,
stupid.
It is. It's literally like saying to you, well,
So yeah, okay, I was cashing this check, but I'm basically setting myself on fire to do it.
Yeah, it's like me saying to you, well, I'm in this, I'm in the desert, and I'm happy to take this bottle of water, which is, nice shiny water, but, to take that water, I'm actually just going to, destroy the stream that's right next to me. It doesn't make sense. You don't break trust of your viewers like that.
Trust is important. And
no, that's one of the reasons that we're always like so upfront with you guys about.
Well, we've only done the one deal,
yeah,
right, and that's literally it. And obviously, if we ever did any more, we would say, and it makes me scratch my head that obviously this has happened now. The YouTubers could have said no to this contract, and I don't obviously know what this contract looked like. I have no idea. But I have to wonder if perhaps the part about not being able to disclose was perhaps hidden. Because if that was me and I saw that contract, I mean, yeah, you see the number $30,000 and you kind of get dollars in your eyes. I get that, but surely if you noticed, hey, you can't tell your viewers, I'd be like, no.
Yeah, plus as well. I mean, 30,000 is a lot. But it's not enough to live on for the rest of your life. So let's say even if it's enough for you to live on for a year, like for sake of argument, it doesn't. You've basically destroyed your viewers' trust to the point where are they ever going to really trust your opinion again? You basically set your own self on fire. I don't understand that. And morally as well, from the perspective of a creator, it's like. It always really freaking freaks me out that people messaged us and like, yeah, dude, what would you recommend out of buying X GPU and B GPU? Or would you recommend this game? Do you think it's good? And it's like, morally, I can't say that, I'm going to recommend X because why would you do that? It really...
The whole thing is strange.
It really freaks me out, but that's just me.
Yeah. Next, I guess, would be the Sulon Q, which is kind of intriguing to me. The combined VR and AR headset that is completely untethered from any PC or console.
I think this technology is really cool. And I think it has some really interesting implications. Imagine putting someone on LSD and then putting that on their head.
You're trying to murder people?
I'm not saying it would be the goal. I'm just saying that... No, seriously though. Imagine, like, some of the implications. For example, when I was staying up until an ungodly time when I was still sick and recording all this stuff. I'd like the violin to start playing. Thank you. No. Anyway, I was saying, imagine you do like a Resident Evil tour, like in a proper mansion, and you've got like people, like actors dressed up as zombies. And imagine how militant that would be.
It really interests me, and I just wonder how this is actually going to compare in terms of like graphics and performance and everything else to obviously the Oculus Vive and
poorly at the moment.
PlayStation VR and obviously HoloLens, which we know basically nothing about. But...
poorly at the moment because obviously.
Yeah, obviously it's not even out yet. It's not going to be out for a while, but
imagine what
it's interesting to me.
What I think will be better is when the technology moves down to like 14 or possibly even 10 nm GPUs, and you've got a lot more power you can fit in there. I think it's going to be really awesome. I think for certain events, like once again the whole haunted mansion, for like imagine even going paintballing with something like this, or even little things like, for example, imagine going to concerts or theatre or movies.
Well, they've already kind of got that with like the Gear VR, and I would imagine they're going to have it on Oculus and Vive as well, where there's like 360-degree events. Like there's I know there's one for wrestling on the Gear VR, and if they did like VR concerts and stuff, I would be totally down for that. Cause it's like some concerts where I'm like, oh, that's in this random like European country or something.
Yeah, but I imagine you go to the theatre, and this actually is slightly off topic, but I know. But there was a chap, I can't remember his name, but he was from Fox, and he was saying that one of the issues they've had is they haven't had enough GPU power to put in bring their projects to life, right? But they are actually creating virtual reality movies. They're starting to create basically shooting and creating these effects for virtual reality cinema experiences like Assassin's Creed. So imagine just the future holds. It's going to be incredible.
Yeah, no, I'm getting pretty excited about VR. I mean, it's got a long way to go. Obviously, 2016 is the year VR comes out, but I think it's going to take a while for it to really.
It's going to be a couple of years.
Things. Yeah, 2016 is not going to be the year of VR. 2017 might be. as we see prices reduce and more people get it and blah, 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 blah. But I'm definitely interested, and I think it's going to be very exciting indeed to see where it goes. And I actually think this is going to be the next big innovation for gaming. Obviously, we've had a couple of like full starts with that, like 3D didn't really do anything. Motion control was a thing for a bit, and then it kind of swiftly died. But I think this is actually going to be the next big thing. At least that's how I've always felt. So I guess we'll see.
Okay. Do you want to move on to the different topics?
Yeah. I guess the last thing to discuss is more your thing about Polaris and at GDC.
I've already hinted at some stuff, but suffice to say, I think we're all quite disappointed that the more wasn't shown off of Polaris. But in terms of the Radeon conference, and I think that the conference was pretty good. I really wish they'd shown off more Polaris, but I'm unsurprised they didn't. But in terms of their vision of the future, and this goes for NVIDIA as well, this is not just an AMD thing. I have a feeling when we see NVIDIA's upcoming conferences throughout the year, it's really interesting how the graphics industry is moving forward. And what might sound really astounding to you is that, you know, we're all on like 1080p screens now, 1440p and 4K for some. But, you know, AMD are predicting by the end of like 2017, we're going to start seeing on the market 8K screens. 8K HDR displays, which are going to require an ungodly amount of power. I mean, do you know how many GPUs you need to render realistic virtual reality? I mean, by realistic, is like if I tranquilized you, put a headset on you, and then you just woke up for a good couple of minutes, you would not realise you were in virtual reality. Do you know how much power you need? 1 million times the amount of GPU power we've currently got on our top-end cards available for the PC. And they reckon, you know, 100 times is going to be quite a significant leap, but it's a long way away. And, you know, we're going to get there. And I just think that the companies, and I'm not just saying AMD here, I mean, whether it's from Ubisoft, and Ubisoft showed some really interesting stuff, whether it's from Fox, whether it's from the folks over at Unity or CryEngine, Crytek, or NVIDIA, or even Intel, or any of these guys, I think the actual future of interactive entertainment is going to be really exciting. I think it's going to be absolutely awesome. And I think if you were to go back, also if you were to warp yourself like 10 years into the future, it's going to be all-encompassing technology where you've got smartphones which are more powerful than our most incredible desktop PCs at the moment. It's going to be amazing.
Alright, well, I think that's all the relevant news topics for today. Is there anything else we want to discuss?
Did you have a look at GDC? What have you been thinking about it?
Not really, to be quite honest. I mean, I saw the Sulon queue, but other than that, not really, no.
I've had a look. I've been kind of going through bits and pieces because obviously I'm going to be doing analysis of it. I've had a look at some of the DirectX 12 conferences, which is kind of nice. Obviously, you've got Build coming up in a couple of weeks. I can't remember the exact date. I think it's early April. I can never remember.
To be honest.
Yeah, I know it's a couple of weeks, and that's looking quite interesting. But I think it was a good conference. I think they pretty much shown all what we expected. I'm going to be really curious when they start putting the PDFs of the presentations publicly available. And I was speaking to a couple of developers, and they said that most of them, you know, a lot of them, especially on DX12 and the GPU technologies, they are going to start becoming more open, which is obviously a good thing, especially now even NVIDIA are starting to embrace the, I guess you could say, the more open source nature of GPUs. They're starting to push GameWorks as an open source, which is really good in my opinion. But I have a feeling some of that is down to be competitive to GPU Open from AMD, but maybe more.
Okay, well, I think that's everything for this week. Unless there's anything else.
I'm good.
All right, so hit us up with any questions for next week's podcast. As always, guys, thank you very much for listening. We will see you next week.
Pretty much.
Bye.
Pretty much.